YouTube. It's Will from Metal Development. This is my 300th? Yeah. Weekly update. Big 300, huh? Pretty neat. A lot of weeks. A lot of work. A lot of memories. Anyway, I don't really celebrate the kind of, what do you call them? Individual numbers, so to speak. I just do yearly updates, which are pretty cool. So coming up on like 4 years, I think there, right? Yeah. So that's pretty wild too. It'll be in September. I guess I better get started on that too. So I'll talk about this week. It's been a bit of a rough week. A lot of things for a lot of reasons. I don't normally get into personal stuff because that's not what this channel is really about. But, and this isn't like relationship stuff. This is just normal stressors in life that are bound to happen. And why I'm a huge advocate of preparing for things you can't expect. So saving money and things like that. What's his name? Dave Ramsey. He advocates for saving up to 3 to 6 months worth of bills just in case something comes up, you lose your job or what have you. You'll be okay for 3 to 6 months, pay off just the necessities, that kind of thing. But it's also great because you can save up for emergencies. I was about a month away from saving up for 6 months, and I went to deliver some stones on Sunday, all the way down to Miami, which is about 3 hours from here. I'm in Central Florida. And got there was very little problems at all. And then just as I started my truck to head back home, actually we were going to stop somewhere local to get a little bite to eat. He told me about a really nice little Mexican place, which I love Mexican food. And just as I put it in gear to start going, my number 6 cylinder just started misfiring. Terrible situation. Essentially, my theory is that my injector went bad, which happens. I don't know how much you know about engines, but it's an important piece, let's just put it that way. And misfiring on a cylinder is never a good thing. Let's just put it that way. I did what I had to do. I got us home. And since Sunday, I have been working on it, slowly taking it apart and doing things of that nature. I don't know if I've ever mentioned it on this channel before, but I do have a background in mechanics. So it's not, most mechanical jobs are not out of my wheelhouse. I have plenty of tools to do the jobs with, especially a job like this, which is not, it's not terribly labor intensive or knowledge intensive. It's just sort of knowing what to take off, where to put things, and just little tips and tricks. Kind of like most things on cars, really. They're not that complicated. That's another thing. If you don't really know much about cars, you should learn. It's really not that complicated. Even the newer ones, they are kind of like, cars, like, brand new ones, 2020s, are getting to the point where it's like, whoa, like, I don't know how to do half this stuff. But it's still an internal combustion engine most of the time. And most of the things with suspension are still the same as they've been for the last 30 to 40 years. There's been some upgrades and some things change, but you'll still have to replace bushings and things like that. And there's still bearings, in wheels and stuff like that. Some of the internal parts of engines have changed, but for the most part, like, changing injectors is still changing injectors, and things like that haven't really changed all that much. So if you don't really know cars, you should learn just the basics. Worst case, at least, it keeps you from getting ripped off. I grew up in a mechanic shop, and some of the things I saw go on there weren't exactly the most honorable. Let's just put it that way. And that's, I've been to shops and just to do certain jobs that I couldn't do myself because I didn't have the tools at the time, or it was just one of those things where it's like, it'd be easier to just pay somebody a few $100 to do this particular job than for me to spend a weekend doing it. And, they've tried to, well, not be honorable and, get me out of more money. And luckily I had certain knowledge, so it was like, no, that's not how that works. You can't, don't try to do this. Just do the job I want, that kind of thing. So that's been a very stressful thing on top of training on Saturday, which driving there and back went fine too. Uh, Always a little beat up coming back from my training partner out there. So I took the week pretty easy, and I'll just get into that. Monday, did some high rep squats. I did sets of 12 at 135 just to keep the blood moving. My hip flexors were killing me from the yoke, so I said, let me just shove a bunch of blood in there. And then deadlifts, still just worked up to, just the single at 385. Things were moving slow on Monday, though. Tuesday, my shoulders still felt a little funny from Saturday's training. And then, so I just did some work with 135, and I could tell I was really out of it, because just doing sets of 6 at 135 strict were like tearing me apart. And it was like, wow, okay, yeah, I'm definitely not doing great. Terrible sleep too. I could tell my nervous system was a little bit, it was right on the edge of just overtrained, I would say, or under recovered, as I prefer the term. Wednesday was just working on the truck, trying to get things going. Ended up getting most of it taken apart, but I didn't quite have the parts to replace it with yet, so it's one of those things. And with older cars, which I drove, right now I have a 99 Ranger Ford, so it's, when you're dealing with a vehicle that's 21 years old, stuff breaks as you're taking it off, it's just what happens. Just, it's old plastic, it's been under heat and expansion, contraction for years, so luckily on Wednesday I didn't have any of those problems, but, I'll get to more of that later. Thursday, leg day again, did some squats at 185, did like sets of 7, felt like I had a little more in the tank, but my hips started to kind of feel like, what are you doing? So I was like, okay, all right, save it, do a little more on deadlifts. Ended up pulling 390 on Thursday for an easy single. A little slow around mid-shin, but the takeoff was pretty good, and the lockout was good and strong, so that's, you take what you can get sometimes. Took the day off work today, worked on the truck, put the new injectors in. Lo and behold, some vacuum hoses were just no good and just broke because I was trying to reinstall them, and then another piece of vacuum, I don't even know what to call it, a piece of the vacuum system broke on me. Part won't be until Monday. What are you going to do? It is what it is. So instead I worked on my girl's car and got her car sorted out. She needed new bearings if anybody's interested. New wheel bearings, which went great. Car sounds awesome now. It's awesome. Hers is doing great, which I'm glad for. At least one of us have a fully functioning vehicle. Which in Florida is important. Most things in Florida are pretty far apart, unless you live directly in one of the hubs like Orlando or Miami. You sort of need a vehicle to get around. It's just everything's 20 minutes away. So the truck's shot, so, going back to that whole saving up money, it's, where I'm at right now is essentially I'm just going to purchase a new vehicle, get this one fixed up, and then just sell this one. I've had it for about 2 years. It works out, But these things happen. These things are going to come up, and it's important to try to find something consistent in your life. I almost didn't go to the gym today, but instead I did go. And because I went, I feel better, even though I didn't push it too hard. I actually ended up training with one of the guys at the gym there, who's a little bit weaker than me, but I sort of needed that because I knew if I sort of pushed myself, my body's not really in the proper groove to push it right now. So I trained with him, worked up to bench. I haven't benched in like a serious bench session, other than just like laying down and doing some celebrity guest reps. Probably 3 to 6 months, probably 3 months is closer. Worked up to 275 for a relatively easy single. I felt like I had another 15 pounds in me at least. So it's good to know any day of the week I can still hit 290 on bench. And then we did a little overhead work because we want to do some overhead work and some dips, and that's all I did today. It was just, a little easier thing. I'm beat up. I'm tired. I haven't slept well in like 3 days, which is partially because of the training on Saturday. I know I'm still recovering from that. And then partially because of this whole vehicle situation. It's stressful, and, I don't come to the decision of purchasing a new vehicle, new to me anyway, vehicle lightly, especially to essentially dwindle my savings down like that. It's not an easy decision for me. So it's been stressful, but I have a constant in my life, and going to the gym is a constant, and just being in there and being around the guys and getting a little training session, especially a little pump session, and it releases all the endorphins, and I do feel better. I'm still a little stressed. I'm still, not happy, excuse me, about the situation I'm in, but this too shall pass, and I'm just looking at it as an opportunity to get a newer vehicle, and newer to me, it's either 2002 or 2004. Like, those are the two I came down to, and I'm going to check them out tomorrow. So it's still new to me, and it's newer than what I've got. So at least it's from this millennium, and we'll go from there, and then I'll just go right back to saving up my savings again. And it only took me about 6 months to save up this time, so I'll just spend the next 6 months putting a few $100 from my checks in, and we'll go from there, and that's all there is to it. But I highly recommend that you do that if you don't. And I think, not to get in too far into it, because that's not what we're about here, but most people, if you kind of sit down and actually look at your budget, most people don't do that. Most people just kind of like buy what they need as they need it, or want as they want it, and then kind of at the end of the month go, oh man, I'm at zero or whatever. But if you actually sit down, you might realize, like, oh, you know what, I didn't actually have to buy, I didn't have to order out 3 times this month, that sort of thing. That's $60 I could have saved, or instead spent $10 just cooking at home, that sort of thing. And these are just example numbers, obviously, but it's one of those things where it's like, you should always expect the unexpected. Much like injuries in the gym, life is going to throw injuries at you, and you're always going to rise to the level of your least preparedness. So if you're only prepared for an emergency of $1,000, and when a $1,500 comes up, now you're talking about debt. Debt's never a good thing, unless we're talking about a house. I think house debt is the one debt that most people would agree is fine to get into. But don't get into a debt over a car. I buy all my cars outright. There's a reason for that, because monthly payments are stupid on cars, and cars never gain value unless you have like a classic, which if you've got a classic, you're probably not that worried about money anyway. But these principles will apply even, whether you make $20,000 a year, $40,000 a year, $80,000 a year, $120,000 a year, it doesn't matter. The same principles will apply and will help you be prepared. And yeah, so, it's been a stressful week, but my favorite quote, this too shall pass. And I highly recommend everybody start saving, even if it's just $50 from every check. I think every person on the planet could probably find $50 they're just sort of wasting, that they don't need to spend, and just put it in a savings account. I can't recommend a high interest savings account enough. Really check your savings accounts, because a lot of them are stupid, and you're getting like less than 1% interest on them, which is just dumb. A lot of online banks now, and they have like over 1% interest. I mean, it's, and it's compounding, so if you have $50 in there, you might make $1, or, well, like 50 cents. Then you have 100 the next month. Now you make $2 on it. That kind of thing. Compounding interest is the most powerful thing in the world, I think. Unless you can rep out 405 on bench. That's pretty powerful too. Just to bring it back. But yeah, it's been a stressful week. It's not over yet, but I was prepared, and I'm not going to be completely out. And luckily I've surrounded myself with good people that were able to help me. I was able to get rides to work every day and not have to spend money for that, taking, taxis or ride services. So, it's the 6 P's, proper preparation prevents piss poor performance. It's that simple. So if you stay ready, you don't have to get ready. And I was ready for an emergency, luckily. And then that's another great quote, right? Like, luck is just being prepared for when an opportunity arises. So it's a great way to look at things. I have an opportunity to get a new vehicle, and I'm prepared for this opportunity now, and it was because I prepared in the past. You can't really prepare in the future. So start right now. Start saving a little bit of money, and save yourself just a little bit of stress. Because if I didn't have that savings, I'd be way more stressed than I am right now. And stress is not great. Unless you're talking about progressive overload. And if you're not, then what's your excuse?